Welcome back to the Sports News Analysis YouTube channel, where I'm breaking down all of the games of Wild Card Weekend right here on my YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe to my page, check out my other videos to get all of my sports talk videos delivered directly to your inbox. In the first game of Wild Card Weekend, the Cincinnati Bengals will travel to Houston to take on the Texans. This is a rematch of last year's first Saturday Wild Card Weekend game as well. It'll be a 4 o'clock kickoff on NBC. Cincinnati comes into the playoffs surging, having won 7 of their last 8 games here. The Texans, sort of the opposite. They dropped their last 2 games heading into the playoffs. They lose out on a bye. They find themselves playing on Wild Card Weekend. They come in with a record of 12-4, and Cincinnati, with a record of 10-6, having clinched that wild card in Week 16 with a very stirring victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. So both of these teams, the momentum says, they're going in different directions. As far as the Bengals go, the Bengals, very under the radar, feature a very good pass rush. They lead. They're near the top of the league in sacks. If you look at their defensive numbers, they're stout against the pass and against the run. They've really obviously taken off this last half of the season, having won 7 of 8 games. You saw an offense that was more responsible with the ball. You saw them run the ball better in the second half of the year and limit the turnovers and really depend a lot on that defense, which again has stepped to the forefront and is a very underrated unit. And I think that's why you'll see Mike Zimmer be a popular name if he's the defensive coordinator of the Bengals. If a team is looking for a defensive mind to be their head coach, I think you'll see Zimmer garner a lot of attention for the work he's done with a good and young defense in Cincinnati. As far as Houston goes, Houston's a little bit of a puzzling case. It seemed as though 2 weeks ago it was a foregone conclusion that they would win the 1 seed and get home field advantage throughout the playoffs in the AFC. It obviously did not materialize like that. They find themselves in the 3rd seed, having lost their last 2 games at home to Minnesota and on the road in Indianapolis. Obviously, they lost to Minnesota, who was playing for their playoff lives. And that doesn't seem as bad as a loss now, given the fact of what Minnesota did in Week 17 and actually beat the Packers too. The loss against the Colts, I don't know why this happened, but I underestimated how hard the Colts would play in Week 17. I think that was sort of a mistake on the Colts' part, but I can't blame them for playing as hard as they did because they were obviously playing for their coach, and I respect that a lot. But the Colts definitely kept the pedal to the metal in Week 17 when they had their playoff seeding solidified, which I didn't think they'd do. And, Houston just plain old did not look good in that game. No excuses. It's not that, the Colts offense was overwhelming. I just think it's Houston's offense that just underachieved. Matt Schaub has been up and down all season. The one consistent has been Arian Foster. He hasn't been as good, I think, as people would expect, but he's definitely been solid. And, I look for them to lean heavily on Arian Foster, as they did in the playoff game last year against Cincinnati here. Andre Johnson, although it seems like he's had an under-the-radar year, did go over 1,500 yards receiving. I question if Cincinnati has, maybe a Leon Hall to cover him. Can he do the job? All I know is that Cincinnati will be able to roll the coverage over to Johnson whenever they need to, because I think what's really hurt Houston this season is the lack of anyone stepping up across from Andre Johnson. Obviously, a big strength of the Houston team is their defense, most notably defensive lineman J.J. Watt, who will probably win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't really see how anyone else could really come up and sort of snatch that award from him. He's the kind of guy that could literally, he comes as close to anyone in the NFL, I think, of being able to win a game for you. That's how dominant he is. Can't underscore the fact that Houston is at home, and they are a 12-4 team. I know they faltered at late in the season, but the way I look at the NFL is every team has a bad quarter of the season. That a 4-game stretch where they play a little bit worse than probably their real talent indicates. And I also think they have a 4-game stretch where they actually play better than their talent indicates. I think Cincinnati is coming off that high note, and I think Houston is coming off that low note. And while I think Cincinnati has improved immensely from last year, I don't think they've improved enough to beat the Texans. So I know a lot of people will be on the Bengals this week based on how the Texans finished the season. But I actually like the Texans -4.5 at home to take care of the Bengals and advance then to go and play New England now on the road again in the divisional round. I think Houston now has their sights set on getting that revenge against New England, but they can't do that yet until they take care of business. Look for a big game from Arian Foster. Look for Matt Schaub to do enough. And look for J.J. Watt to dominate. And look for the Bengals, make no mistake about it, to play hard and to put pressure on Schaub in spots. We'll see how this game goes. But as of now, I like Houston -4.5 against Cincinnati. Let's say in a 24-17 type game. Be sure to check all my other wildcard weekend previews here. Be sure to subscribe to my page. And as always, thank you very much for listening and have a good night.